fourth and also complementary perspective, I'd like to turn to Paul, who is in charge of Arshia and also the subsidiary to Arshia, Cyberlog. So from the standpoint of an Indian-based logistics business, I'm sure Paul has a different perspective. So Paul, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Good morning and Sawadee Kap. First of all, I also would like to thank Paul for the great arrangements in pulling everyone together and seeing how as a community we can collaborate in driving the future developments of supply chain in the region. There was a time when logistics was in the back office of many companies, including in the US and Europe. And it's only in the last 5 or 6 years where it has really evolved into a strategic tool for global companies to use as a major weapon in gaining competitive advantage. Michael Dell Computers is a great example of that, and how they play with the supply chain to drive the cost down by $350 per laptop against some of their competitors, as an example. But the question is, when do we in Asia learn from the US and Europe, and is it now time that we drive our own solutions and initiatives? China will become, in fact it already is, but even more so in the future, the manufacturing center of the world. It's a fact. Nothing will change that reality. India is becoming the outsourcing center of the world. And it's not just back office activities and IT, it's now cutting edge roles supporting a number of major global industries. This is a major transition in Asia and all of the ASEAN countries as well. So supply chain and logistics are enablers that I believe will revolutionize this market in the next 5 years. One of the trends we see globally is the consolidation of the industry at the top. Mega mergers, you did a good job with a few of them in the last year at PwC, but mega mergers will be combining multiple companies across the globe. The challenge is, can they absorb the different corporate cultures effectively and seamlessly to take advantage of that synergy, or will there be gaps? And that's a management issue. And I think there will be good examples and bad developing in the industry. I think the middle space is at risk, because with global players integrating, smaller players will always find a niche space. Those in the middle globally will be at risk from increasing pressure from above, cost, technology, etc. So the market will change radically in the next 5 years in Asia and worldwide. And the industry will consolidate and be much tighter in the next 5 years, I believe. There are major trends, and one is logistics isn't just moving product anymore. It's playing with the whole working capital of product moving across the whole supply or demand chain. I think one of the trends that will evolve is we'll stop using the word supply chain and we'll start using the word demand chain in the next few years, because that's really what we want to do. We want to control instant response of product fulfillment to each consumer, not a supply pushing product out. So I might argue, we can debate it later, that we're actually using the wrong word. We should all be talking about demand chain going forward, because that's really where the market is moving. I think regional hubbing is a trend that's been evolving, and it's going to expand dramatically. Singapore is a major hub. Hong Kong is a hub. Dubai is becoming a hub. These are value creation centers. They're not just moving product in, they're actually changing, repackaging, relabeling, assembling product as it moves through the global supply chain. Singapore, as an example, was feeding my previous business. We were feeding 14 countries in Asia just in time from a hub in Singapore. So you don't have to spread your product all over Asia. You can deploy product in a more creative way. I think financial chain management is going to be an enabler. It's not just moving product, it's watching the cash flow, your cost of capital as product moves across the globe. And that becomes a critical area. So technology and its ability to integrate across the different logistics functions will become a major differentiator in the next few years. And in factories, demand forecasting, the physical tracking of product, monitoring your working capital as product moves through the supply chain. These become major tools And without them, I think companies will be very vulnerable. So my main objective is to say that I don't believe the supply chain trends will be driven from the US and Europe as they were in the past. I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be tremendous innovation with technology evolving here in Asia, with the way supply chains can be played with. Hubbing has evolved in Asia at a much more sophisticated level than the US or Europe. People just don't realize it. So there's a lot of opportunity to change this industry, and I think it's a very exciting time in terms of mergers, new technology, the transition with China and India becoming major superpowers. And for this industry, it's a good time to converge and try to drive these changes from Asia instead of learning from outside.
Do you have a comment? Will there be a top 25 Asian player?
There already is. I think no offense, but I think your figures are skewed to traditional definitions.
Right.
You know, first of all, where are all the new ports going up? They're going up in Asia. The US, Europe, the ports are getting older. They're trying to upgrade them. The most modern, highest volume ports in the world are in Asia, including Dubai, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore, and even Malaysia building up with major port infrastructure. Where the newest, most highest volume airports going up in the world? In Asia.
Right.
Okay, so we're missing something. The infrastructure is building up in Asia, cutting edge technology, and in the US and Europe, the funding for upgrading is being spread out. So that's one issue. The second one is, my bias will show, Paul, but I think if you look a little wider, I think Li & Fung is already a $10 billion company manufacturing out of 7,500 virtual factories with logistics and feeding product around the world. I think they are in the top 25. I just don't think they fit in the traditional definition, because you were looking at moving product. They're looking at a whole virtual network. So I think we already have a few Asian top 20 companies. I think Li Ka-shing of Hutchison is controlling more ports in the world today than any other company, and I think that's part of logistics too. So I think in Asia, we're getting control of world ports, Dubai ports in Europe, and almost in the United States.
Almost.
But see, we're missing something. We're using the normal definition, and we're saying we're not strong and aggressive, and I want to disagree with my long time in Asia as well. The ports, the airports, the global technology of managing ports, and the virtual supply chain with manufacturing, and the new technology innovation, which isn't being done in the US, it's being done in India. These are all being driven from Asia. So I'm a lot more confident than your statistics that we already have top 20 players, and we'll have more in the future.
And that's a good point, but it still raises the question in freight forwarding, warehousing, transportation.
So I'll go to the next level underneath. Political risk still exists, but it's improved tremendously in the region, as Robert said and you've mentioned. When you look at China, there's still a risk, but it's mitigated. The more the economy integrates globally, the less that risk becomes apparent. There's still that risk, but taking it to a lower level, there's a risk of excess warehouse capacity in the wrong places. Everyone moves in, they build a lot of infrastructure, the old model, and then as manufacturing shifts, as business opportunities shift, there's a lot of excess capacity in certain areas, which is building up. It's not all perfectly positioned. There's a risk that technology will have gaps in integration as the supply chain gets more complex, and as product moves from different areas, there's a risk that technology won't integrate effectively, which is the invisible risk. And I think, going back to a core issue, there's the risk with tremendous growth coming in the region that we won't develop enough professionals to execute the solutions at the mid and higher level. So these are things that we need to focus on to mitigate those risks in the future. I think the opportunities are huge, but risks are something we all do. That's part of the fun of international trade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben, just one last question. We're going to run out of time.
The final question.
I have one question to make. See,
we spoke quite a lot, but have we exactly thought, is there any political will or will of the political leaders and economic leaders to have one thinking for customer satisfaction, for labor relations, for relationship management between the various countries, so that logistics as a process, I don't want to get into chains and chains of logistics, by the chain of logistics, but the logistics process, I say, is there anything that we could think about that our various constituent countries in Asia is thinking about it, particularly the labor regulations, particularly the economic imbalances, how we're going to go it if we aim at customer satisfaction, if we aim downsizing the cost, etc. May the forum think on these lines and speak something. Thank you.
Maybe you could just clarify the question. I think it might help.
So wishful thinking.
I say, see, we spoke so much about our business part of the game, our infrastructure part of the game, but everything between the different countries depend on the political will of the political leadership. With so much of political imbalances within the various constituent countries of Asia, will the forum, or will our forum speaker be able to throw some light as to what we propose to solve these imbalances or grow certain political will to bring about customer satisfaction and bring down the economic imbalances, what Bobby particularly spoke about.
I just think countries compete. As much as we like to collaborate through World Trade Organization and APEC and other organizations, countries still compete. And I think the good news is the countries that don't address the barriers to efficiency will be bypassed. A good example is hubbing. Hubbing goes through Singapore, Hong Kong, and Dubai for a very simple reason, because customs is very efficient. It's not just geographic location, it's because those governments have taken the consumer satisfaction, to your point, to a higher level. They have taken down the barriers, therefore you can move product through these hubs. Other countries could have probably been better positioned geographically, but they didn't address those barriers, they've been bypassed. I think there's not a perfect world where WTO will force all the countries and governments and politicians to converge, because there are too many hidden interests in all countries. But the good news is that the countries who address the concerns on a global standard are being rewarded with more volume moving through, with higher value-added activities. And the governments that don't address those issues, customs being a key issue, they're getting bypassed. They're losing billions of dollars of opportunities. And as a forum, this is always viewed as a quiet, low-level issue, but it isn't. We need to put pressure as users in the industry, from all of the backgrounds in this room. How do we put pressure on the governments to deal with customs issues in certain countries? Because it's a major barrier, and it will open up a lot more opportunity for the efficiency you mentioned.
Paul, I think that's a very good point.